Hey, it's Dean DeMarzo here on Dean Talks Music, making you a better music producer today. And today we're checking out the Emulator II V by Arturia. Now, like I said in my last video, Arturia just came out with their V Collection version 8, which I'm super excited about. If you haven't seen my last video checking out their Juno VST, definitely go watch that when you get a chance. Today we're looking at the Emulator II. Now, the Emulator II was a sampler introduced in the 80s by a company named E-mu, and it was easily the most popular sample-based synthesizer of the 80s. It was way more accessible and affordable than the Fairlight CMI, which was the really big budget sampler of the era, so it found its way onto a lot of records of the time. Like you heard me play in the intro, it was the shakuhachi flute sound used in Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer, and it was also a huge part of the Pet Shop Boys sound. Now, Arturia has done an amazing job recreating the functionality and the sound of this sampler. So we're going to take a quick look through the features, jump through some of the presets they've included, and then just try making a quick track using some of these sounds. Have some fun with it. Now, when you open up the Emulator II, you'll be greeted with this awesome view of the instrument itself, floppy drives and all. But what we want to do first is go through the real functionality of this instrument, and that's got to be done on this little screen up here. So you can click right here, or you can click the screen button up in the corner to be taken to this more advanced page, where we can do some real work on the sounds. I'm still on my shakuhachi flute sound here, so I'm going to jump down to their default template, and we'll just take a look at what this instrument is capable of. Now, this is a sampler, which means it's not creating any of its own sounds. It's playing back short samples of other instruments that it's recorded. The default template starts with this simple little string sample. We can hear it if we just play a key. And it sounds like a Super Nintendo sample. It's got this nice vintage kind of lo-fi sound to it, and that's actually controlled by this DAC mode setting in the corner here. Vintage gives you that classic sound. Modern gives you a cleaner, more modern sound, but frankly, the vintage sound is why I'd be using this in the first place instead of just the sampler built into Ableton, so I like to leave it on vintage. Just for comparison's sake, I'll play something on both of those settings real quick. You can hear modern is just slightly brighter. It's not a big difference. So the real functionality of the emulator starts on the left here with these sample banks. This has 8 samples you can load in at any given time and use in a variety of ways. As I click on these, you'll see the sampler settings on the right here change. That's because these are all reflecting what is going on in each of these individual slots. So for example, I have my strings loaded in here on the first channel. I'm going to go to my second channel, hit Browse, and let's choose a different sound. Let's choose something like a acoustic guitar. These are samples from the different ranges of a guitar. Higher notes are going to sound a bit brighter than lower notes. So try to pick something close to the range that you think you'll be playing this instrument in. Or pick something really far from the range you'll be playing in, and it'll sound really weird and kind of cool. I'm going to pick G3. Now you'll see that when I'm on guitar, we see the information for the guitar sample, and now we see the information for the string sample. I can solo this guitar track, meaning I only want to hear this. And I can hear just the guitar. Now, I can change a lot of things about how we're using this sample. I can transpose it up and down. Or just reset it to 0 by double-clicking. You can also do more fine-tuning, and even change the way the sample itself is used. If I want this to start later in the sample, or end earlier, or even repeat, I can move the length of the sample itself, and then just move the length of the loop if I like. So say I want to just loop this section here. That sounds pretty weird, so let's fade it a little bit. And now we have kind of this interesting looping guitar sound. Let's bring our strings back in by turning off the solo. Now, we also have all the standard trimmings of a synthesizer, a filter, an envelope for the VCA, and an LFO built in, as well as some effects. This is a low-pass filter that works exactly how you'd expect it to. We can add a little bit of attack and decay to it and use the envelope knob to make those affect this frequency. And we can also make both the velocity and the placement of the keyboard affect this filter. So for example, if I turn this all the way up, lower notes will have a lower frequency for this filter than the higher notes. It'll open up as I go up the keyboard. So here it's totally closed, but it opens up as I go. That's a cool feature. And we, of course, have full control over the attack, decay, sustain, and release of each note. We can make them fade in and out as we play them. Or we can make it really quick and percussive. We also have an LFO that can be connected to either the filter or the volume. Now, you'll notice that each of these controls has a little chain link on them, right? And that means that these are actually linked across the different voices. So if I jump to a different voice here, you'll see that none of these controls have changed, nothing in the filter or the amplifier. And that's because those are linked. If I unlink the guitar, you'll see I can actually have a completely different setup for the guitar. So now the strings might be kind of slow and spacey. Say we want the strings to take a while to fade in, but we want the guitars to happen right away. So we'll leave a really long attack on the strings and no attack at all on the guitar. And the strings fade in behind the guitar as you play. Now, imagine what you could do with 8 of these voices, playing around with different attack settings and filter settings. There's some incredible layering you can do here. I'm going to go back to the default template, and we're going to talk about the assign section. I'm going to set this up slightly differently. I'm going to replace this first sample with, let's say, a nice grand piano, and this second one with a bass of some kind. Here we go. Bass, let's find bass 1. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's hear the bass. Perfect. And the piano. Perfect. Now, this assign tab lets us actually assign different samples to different portions of the keyboard and do all kinds of other cool stuff with this. So I only want my bass to take place on the left half of the keyboard. Let's say up to this C. So I can see where that is, and I can actually just chop that bass down to just below that point. And my grand piano should take over at that point. It should start there. If you'll notice, I played the piano here, and nothing happens after that because it's soloed, which means it's only coming out the bass. Let's turn off the solo here, and we should hear bass down here and piano up here. And we can play both at once, or we could if I was good at playing piano with 2 hands. And again, you can map 8 of these voices to 8 different parts of the keyboard. If you have a huge 88 key piano, this is great for setting up something where you have a different sound in every octave if you wanted to do that. You can, of course, set up overlap portions where they layer onto each other too. You can do anything you want on the screen. Over here on the right, I can map these things to certain controls throughout the instrument. I can make it so if you hit the velocity harder, the instrument is louder, which is a pretty standard thing to do. So I'm going to turn that up, and now if I play quietly, it's relatively quiet, but if I really hit the keys, it's a bit louder. And you can actually select which voices you want to affect with that. So if I don't want the bass to be affected by that, I can play very quietly and the bass is still just as loud. The same goes for the keyboard, where if I want low notes to be affected differently than high notes, I can do that here. Aftertouch, which we talked about in the last video, where if you press down on a key harder after you play it, you can make that affect something. And then your two wheels, your pitch wheel and your modulation wheel, those can affect things as well. And that can all be mapped from here. Down here is the root note setting. This is something important to note. When you sample an instrument, you have to make sure that it's transposed to the right key, right? If you sample somebody playing a G on a piano, but when you load it into your sample, you don't tell your sampler that, hey, this is a G. Everything's going to be off by 4 notes because your sampler might assume that it's playing a C when in actuality it sounds like a G. So thankfully the Emulator 2 seems to just take care of this. If I load in a sample named C#3, it's going to pull it in and know what it's dealing with. Look, it already assumes that's C#3. It takes care of it. Meanwhile, this piano G1 is set to G1. So the emulator takes care of this, but if you're loading in your own samples, it's something to be aware of. I'm going to load up a grand piano sound and head to the effects page. Now, this is just a collection of standard classic effects. We have loaded up by default a chorus, a delay, and a reverb, which I love. Just going to bring in a little bit of chorus and a lot of reverb. But we have all kinds of other effects in here. I'm going to try just a bit of this bit crusher, push the bit depth down quite a bit, and a little bit of downsampling, and we'll turn the mix all the way up. It gets a really fun lo-fi sound. This is something else worth noting. The routing method can be either parallel or series. Parallel means it goes through each one of these separately, meaning you're getting 3 separate effect mixes that do not affect each other. They're all mixed together at the end. On the other hand, you can have series mode, which is a more standard way of handling this, meaning it goes through this effect first, then gets fed into this one, and then into this one, meaning you just have one constant stream of audio going through this. All right, with that all in mind, we can finally go back to the first screen we saw. This page has a very simplified approach to the instrument. We have some master controls for the whole thing. We have volume, tuning, and a full transposition. You can change the voice linking feature here as well, which I don't really know why you'd want this on the front page of it, but it's there if you need it. We also have full access to our filter. And we have the envelope for those filters, as well as our regular envelope. And we have access to our LFO up here as well, along with an arpeggiator. What if we speed that up a little bit? That's fun. And finally, we have access to the mix of each of our effects back here. All right, so that's the feature set of the emulator. It's a pretty standard comprehensive sampler with a fun sound. Let's get into some of the presets they give you here, and then we'll put together a short track. I'm going to start with just a few of these bass sounds. That's funky. I like that one. Let's check out some brass sounds. Find a nice spacey pad. It's like a funky piano sound. That's fun. I like that. Might come back to that. Got some strings here. Nope. Don't like that. Please be better. That's nice. That's pretty. I like that. That's fun. I like these leads. Oh, hello. These are all named after Mario characters. I like this. That's creepy. Ooh. Yeah, that's also creepy. How about a nice chorus, a nice happy chorus? Can we get a happy chorus in here? That's nice. Doesn't sound like a chorus, but sure. All right, it got some interesting sounds in here. One of the things I really like about this is it can do drum kits because it can load multiple samples in, right? So let's check out their 808 kit in here. I'm going to look at the assign page so I can tell which sample is where. Got a kick here, and a snare, clap, hi-hat. Okay. Cool, so let's pick a few sounds out and I'll put together a short track using some of these sounds. This is a sound that I made earlier. I think it was based on one of the sounds they give you in the tutorials, and it sounds nice. Find a nice bass sound to go with that. I want something kind of funky and short. I actually might go with that Dr. Mog and then add a little bit of a filter envelope to this. Let's get some drums going on there. And the cool part is we can use the emulator for drums on this. Let's see what else we can add to this. Maybe some kind of keyboard or bell kind of sound. I like this kalimba sound. I'm going to crank up the volume on this a little bit. Get some reverb going. Some chorus. Yeah, that sounds fun. Let's take a listen to that. Yeah, I like that a lot. Cool. So that is the Arturia Emulator II V. Super cool sampler, super cool instrument to play with. A lot of really inspiring sounds built into this. and a lot of really fun stuff you can do very easily just playing around with some of the settings. I didn't want this video to be too long, so I really only scratched the surface of what this thing can do. I've only had it for a few days, so I'm still learning a lot about it as well. I can highly recommend the V Collection. It's an incredible group of instruments to play with, super inspiring stuff to have in your collection, and it really does cover a little bit of everything in the synthesizer and keyboard world. If you want to learn more about the Emulator 2 or the V Collection, or if you're interested in buying it, I will put a link in the description below. Now, for full disclosure, that is an affiliate link, which means if you click the link and then buy the V Collection or anything else on that site, I actually get a tiny little percentage of that, which is just a nice way to support the channel while you get some cool gear in the process. Thank you so much for watching. I had a lot of fun with this synthesizer. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below for me, anything related to the Emulator 2 or anything else about music production, and I'll be happy to answer them either in the comments or in a future video. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that for more videos like this one, talking about music production and new gear and synthesizers. Again, I've been Dean DeMarzo here on Dean Talks Music. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.